Yeah, it was a contrasting quarterback demeanor. We love watching quarterback demeanor and studying it. Can they overcome a bad night? Caleb Williams is one of the rare guys who can overcome what appears to be very bad demeanor early in a game. He finds a way to flip it and turn it around when it seems like he's reacting in a way that shows implicit resignation to what's ultimately going to happen, that he knows that at the end of the day they're going to lose, and this is just part of the pathway to getting there. C.J. Stroud showed bewilderment. Aaron Rodgers was quickly into the pissed-off Aaron mode, very quickly. And there are 3 or 5 moments that determine a game. The DK Metcalf drop when the Steelers were in position to add to a 3-0 lead. That was the first moment. That was the first not our night moment. And that's really the challenge. And the Bears have proven that they can overcome not our night vibes. The Steelers can't. Most teams can't. Not our night eventually becomes not our night. If you feel it, you start acting that way, and the next thing you know, the dam breaks. And even with that, they still had a chance. It's amazing to me. They had the interception on the Texans' drive to start the second half. They just couldn't get anything going. They could get nothing going. And there was one key play. I was trying to find it in the game book where I think Danielle Hunter got to Aaron Rodgers right before he could get rid of the ball. DK Metcalf was breaking free. And if that ball goes and it's not dropped and it's thrown on target and DK's on the red line, if those things all fall together, he was open for a walk-in touchdown. And Danielle Hunter got to Rodgers just in time. They showed the back view of it last night. I'd kind of forgotten about it because once everything went sideways, who cares? But that was one of those things. There's just a couple. You got opportunities, 2, 3, to bend it your way, and that was one where the Steelers didn't and the Texans did, and then it all broke. People are going to see the score, Devin, and they're going to think the Texans destroyed the Steelers and led wire to wire. They could have, and they should have, but it was 7-6 in the third quarter. It was 10-6 in the fourth quarter. The dam didn't break until the final 11 minutes.
Yeah, and there were other plays that, like you're saying, when it was almost like it's not your night and you feel it, but then there were like plays of hope. And I thought right before the half, Houston has this drive, and it's like, well, this is going to be either a field goal or a touchdown drive, and then they're going to get the ball back in the second half, and they're going to be able to really control the game. And C.J. Stroud moves up, and Nico Collins is wide open running the over route, and it's going to be the big play they need to get in scoring position. And he just overthrows them, throws it a little too hot, a little too far, and you look up, and they're like, well, they're not going to get points before the half. This is going to go in 7-6. And then the drive you just talked about, Houston comes out in the second half, drives right down the field, and then the interception. It was just, I remember I'm sitting there and I'm like, Houston's going to blow this game. And we're going to watch the Steelers next week try to figure out the same kind of game plan. How do we get to 13 points or 17 points and win? And again, credit to Houston's defense for they don't watch the other side. Like, from being on an NFL team and playing with the greatest quarterback of all time and then not having him, the reality and that feeling on defense of when we had Tom and it was an off night for the offense, the mentality just always was just keep getting the ball back because this will not stay an off night. It will not. At some point, Super Bowl 53, prime example, at some point they're going to find the end zone. It was that belief. Then when you don't have a guy like that, it turns into, man, like, if we don't make the play, this game's just going to end. And then mistakes happen unless you're good enough to do that. Houston's defense is good enough to say, don't worry, we'll go win the game. And it's fun to watch from playing defense for so many years to see, man, we're just going to keep doing this. We're going to keep finding a way to get to the quarterback. We're going to keep, like, and you see it, like, right before the snap so many different times, a key third down, and you're just like, okay, here we go. And then right there, Rankins comes up the middle. Will Anderson Jr. is off the edge, and there's this huge play. But the one concern I have for Houston is how many times they would have a big play in that game followed by a negative play. a false start, a holding penalty. It felt like, man, this team, like, how are they making these plays early in the game? Christian Kirk with that big play, and you look up and you're like, man, wait, what? They're punting the ball. They got no points on that drive, or they have a good drive, sets up the flea flicker. They bring in an extra offensive lineman to protect the flea flicker, and it's like, wait, that play's going to end up in a sack, fumble, turnover. So they have to figure out a way. It's not even as much of just how do we get these explosive, great plays. How do we just avoid negative plays where even if we kick 5 field goals in a game because of those guys on the other side, like, we could still win the game if we don't get in our own way. And that last night, C.J. Stroud turnovers are one thing, but some of those was led by some of just the negative, poor plays that they have as an offense.
You mentioned Bill Belichick's reaction, or what it would have been after last night's game if he had been coach of the Texans. And I remember, we've been doing this long enough now, I remember I asked you something like that at one point, and it makes sense. It's easier said than done, though. You have to be able to do it. You have to have the right relationship with the locker room where you can walk in there and say the hard things. But what impresses me about what DeMeco Ryans has been able to create is this atmosphere where there's no sniping, there's no infighting, there's no leaking, there's no complaining by the defense about the fact that the offense doesn't hold up its end of the bargain. We hear about complimentary football all the time. The Texans aren't playing it, or at least they weren't last night. Sometimes they do. Most of the time they don't. As Sims has been saying all year, the Texans defense is good enough to win games all by itself. Oh, and it has to. And I think back, I start scanning the memory banks. The year that Dennis Green became the head coach of the Vikings, 1992, back when you were 5, that was the first time the Vikings had a team that felt like it could contend at a very serious level in a long time. They had kind of accidentally stumbled to the NFC Championship in '87, but it just felt like they were laying the foundation for something special. And I remember late in the season, it was like a Monday night game, and they did a halftime interview with Chris Dolman, who's in the Hall of Fame and was a great pass rusher. And he popped off about the offense. And I remember thinking, this isn't good. This is not good. And they were one and done that year, 24-7 loss to Washington in the playoffs. So you've got to have a defense that is really, really good and also able to take pride in it and not point fingers. Genuinely not point fingers. Not even be inclined to point fingers. Wear it as a badge of honor that they have to carry the offense. We want to carry the offense. We're not going to complain that we have to. We want to do it. It feels like that's what the Texans are, Devin.
Yeah, they are a true team. Like, when I went down there and I got a chance to sit down with Will Anderson Jr., this team doesn't see themselves as an offense, a defense, a special teams. This team sees themselves as, we were all brought here for a reason, and the reason is to play as a team, to go out there and figure out how to win games. Al Shahir talked about starting off 0-3, and Scott Van Pelt asked him after the game, what did you guys do? He said, we didn't do anything. We just kept believing in the plan. And I think to what you just said about DeMeco Ryans, not every team has a head coach where when you go throughout the whole locker room, there's this like sense of belief and admiration and love towards their head coach. And I think when you look at the Houston Texans, they truly believe that DeMeco Ryans and what he tells them leads to victory. And I think that's hard to do in the NFL year in and year out, because every decision you make, whether it's, hey, we fire Bobby Slowick as the offensive coordinator and then we bring in Nick Caley, like, that has to work for those guys in the locker room. And overall, I don't think any of us are screaming, man, like this Houston Texans offense, now they're just really cooking. Like, it's still not that. Did they clean up some of the offensive line issues? Yeah, like you watched the game last night. Yeah, there's some issues different times of the game, but it wasn't like before. And I think those guys in the locker room, whenever DeMeco comes in, or even you take it higher up, Nick Caserio, it feels like they think that they're going to get all the different pieces that they need to go out there and win football games. You watch DeMeco Ryans. hey, he was calling the plays for this defense. He said, this isn't working anymore. Burke, take over as defensive coordinator. You can see like those things show up for this team. And I thought that was huge last night because as much as we talk about Danielle Hunter and we talk about Will Anderson Jr. and Al Shahir, like there's other guys on this defense that make huge plays to win games. Jalen Petrie, I thought, was phenomenal last night, showing up all over the field. The interior part of the defensive line, Sheldon Rankins making plays, Autry making plays, their linebackers running. I thought Burke did a good job last night. This game opened up with Aaron Rodgers being Aaron Rodgers, checking to a screen to DK Metcalf, getting it out to DK Metcalf on another play, drawing a pass interference. It was like, okay, if you guys are going to play all this man, we're going to set some things up. We're going to run some things. It's going to work. It felt like Burke went to a little bit more zone, and then we saw some of those quick passes being thrown out there, and we saw what Houston is the best at. They have the fastest defense, and they were running and hitting, and then it turned into, man, every ball they throw, it feels like one guy's catching, and then 3 or 4 guys are coming out of nowhere and hitting them, and then that's when it felt like, all right, this game and this defense is starting to take over. So I think it's DeMeco Ryans and each decision he makes and that team saying, Coach, we got you. We're going to make that decision right. And it showed up even from when Davis Mills took over and they went out there and won games.
10 days ago, there was a report that Phillip Rivers' name had been floated and background work had been done on him possibly being a head coaching candidate. Now, his name hasn't come up at all since the coaching carousel started to spin, but it got me thinking about high-level players who become coaches. Most successful NFL coaches were not high-level players, specifically high-earning players, because they don't need, after their playing career ends, to go grind away for 19 hours a day as an assistant quarterback coach and work their way up and try to get themselves in position to be a head coach, but maybe someone will just hand them the keys to the franchise. DeMeco Ryans went and did it. Not that he made $320 million like Phillip Rivers, but he was the Defensive Rookie of the Year in 2006, 2-time Pro Bowler, respectable career, and got into coaching and did everything you need to do to become a head coach. And I think when you do that, when you make that commitment as a player who played at a high level, I think it's easier to have credibility. It's easier to relate to how players think, and it's easier to lead. Because why did the Texans players not complain about the offense? Because their head coach isn't complaining about the offense. And maybe their head coach at the right time is saying the right things to get them to be proud of the fact. You know, because at some point, you don't have full credibility with your players if you don't acknowledge what they know.
What it is.
And so you have to find a way, when the offense isn't around, to basically say, hey, we know we're carrying their asses, but that's okay. Let's take pride in that. Whatever he's done, it's a thing of beauty. Because I can't think of a team that was that lopsided and there was no sense that the defense was pissed off at the offense, or you flip it around, the offense is pissed off at the defense. It's almost impossible to keep those two sides from battling with each other when one side is clearly carrying the other. So that's one of those, I think, unnoticed realities, because DeMeco Ryans is making it sure there's nothing happen that we'll notice. We're noticing the absence of dysfunction under circumstances when there should be dysfunction. Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.